welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Sorry if you heard my squeaky chair. Today we'll be going over something a bit different. It's going to be a lot more user-friendly, or kind of like more introductory to WoW, but there's still some bits in there that obviously relate to high-end content, such as PvP, raiding, etc. But we're going to be going over sort of what are hunters, what they do, what their purpose is, their specs, you know, for those who are looking to get into WoW. And there's also going to be some bits and bobs for those who are, you know, more veterans of WoW and kind of what their role is in PvP, raiding, etc. We will start off with the weekly news, however. We have Basrikron and Zakali Elders as your world bosses for this week. They are located in both the Waking Shore and the Zaralak Caverns. World Quest bonus event is this week, so you get more reputation for doing these. Shadowpan Showdown is your brawl. This is where you put 6v6 in a arena, and essentially you have to kill the boss of the opposition team, while making sure that you don't die to the opposition players as well. Fortified, Incorporeal, and Sanguine are your mythic affixes this week. Fortified, essentially your the non-boss enemies have increased health and damage. Incorporeal, I'm still getting a little bit used to these new ones, but I'm pretty sure this is when you just phase out from existence, essentially. So you either keep moving or you have to do something to make sure that you don't get a damage decrease, anything like that. And Sanguine, this is where a mob dies and it puts a blood pool on the floor. You simply want to not stand in this and you want to move the enemy minion or the mobs out of the blood pool, otherwise it will heal them. Today we're going to be going over the Ashbringer. Now the Ashbringer has obviously got a lot of lore, way more than I can go into in one sitting. It would be an entire video on itself. But essentially, the origins of the Ashbringer are during the Blackrock Spire and the Second War. So this is before World of Warcraft's time. Alexandros Mograine found a dark crystal, and this was from the body of a dead warlock from Draenor. And this crystal was described as sort of a living embodiment of shadow. So Mograine kept this crystal until the Scourge invasion of Lordaeron. This is when Arthas happened and everything, Arthas became the Lich King, etc. Or no, not even that. This was kind of as he was turning into the Lich King, that kind of time. He revealed it to other leaders of the Silver Hand and suggested to try and sort of purify it. And what they did, you can actually see this in-game, is if you go back to the old Hillsborough Foothills dungeons and you head to South Shore, this is obviously Caverns of Time, so this is back in the past, you can actually see them purifying this crystal in-game, which is really, really cool, and it's kind of a little Easter egg that not many people notice. But they do manage to purify it, and they put it into a blade, essentially. And it's with this blade, Mograine kind of becomes known as the Ashbringer. Everything that it touches, Scourge-wise, literally just turns to ash, hence the name. So obviously he was kind of insane in killing these Scourge and stuff. But before World of Warcraft's history, he was betrayed by his first son. I believe it's his first son. And essentially he was stabbed in the back by the Ashbringer. He made a deal with Kel'Thuzad, I believe, and essentially killed his father when they were surrounded by Scourge, and this corrupted the Ashbringer. And this led to the Ashbringer no longer being in the game, and the Ashbringer no longer being the actual Ashbringer. It was a corrupted version. And this is the very first version that we get to see in the game. Through Wrath of the Lich King, not even Wrath, through World of Warcraft Classic, you got to see the corrupted Ashbringer as one of the 4 horsemen in the Naxxramas raid was Alexandros Mograine, and he was wielding the corrupted Ashbringer, so you could actually loot this from the body of the 4 horsemen. And there were so many rumours about how to purify the Ashbringer and stuff in-game. There's even an Ashbringer in the data mine itself for World of Warcraft Classic. So many people like speculated on how to purify it and all of that. But essentially it got purified later on in Wrath of the Lich King by his second son, Darian Mograine, giving up the corrupted Ashbringer, who wielded it at the time of Wrath of the Lich King, to Tyrion Fordring, who then purified it to battle against the Lich King at Light's Hope Chapel, that kind of thing. So it's got a lot of lore behind it. There's so many things that I've obviously given a very basic description of it here, but essentially it's got so much lore like caked into one blade that it's way too much to go over like in full depth. But essentially it comes down to it was a dark crystal purified, became a corrupted weapon through the betrayal of a loved one, and then it was purified again by a sacrifice. And then it obviously ended up in the Retribution Paladin's hands via the Legion artifact system, and it is still one of the most iconic Legion artifacts in the game. And this happened due to Tyrion Fordring, who was the wielder of the Ashbringer, essentially dying to, what was it, Cologan? No, Cologan's the one in Ulduar. A big guy. Crex. No, I can't remember his name. A giant manifestation from the Legion. We'll go with that. Essentially, that's what Tyrion Fordring fell to, and you picked up the Ashbringer in his stead. But, you know, it's, like I said, it's so much history behind it, and I've given a very basic version. It's definitely worth going into and having a look at, but I will not be able to do it justice, like, without giving it its whole, like, own sort of, episode, essentially. Now, firstly, before we get into the, like, episode itself, I'd like to say a massive thank you to absolutely everyone who tunes in every week to the tavern. It is growing each and every week with new and older patrons, but I must ask for your support even more. This podcast is not my full-time job, and I put in so much effort and as much effort as I can without having to put any sort of content behind a paywall for you guys, because a lot of this stuff does obviously go behind paywalls with Patreon and stuff like that in other podcasts. And I know that times are very tough. I do not want that for my listeners. So with all of this, down below there is a link to support the show. From as little as like $3 a month, it would mean a massive thank you. I know times are tough, like I've said, and I completely understand that, but the extra support would allow me to continue doing this podcast, churning out more content for you guys. And this isn't obviously having no content behind a paywall. This would be purely if you guys wish to support the channel even further. It would be deeply appreciated. Those who support the channel via this method have a chance to be featured in an episode, either a shout out or sort of interview, like I've done in the past with other players, where it's like, when did you start World of Warcraft, etc. But yes, a massive thank you once again for everyone taking the time to listen. And now let's get back to the episode. So we're going to be going over hunters, essentially, in this episode. And if you're new to WoW, or you're looking to start, or even if you're a veteran, you will still pick up a lot of things from this. So what are hunters? Hunters are essentially a DPS only role that utilize pets to do their damage, pets, traps, anything like that. Kind of what you'd think a normal hunter would be, you know, out in the world. You have 3 specializations for the hunter. You have beast mastery, you have marksmanship, and you have survival. Now, beast mastery is all about your beasts, your pets. Essentially, you have up to 2 pets at one time by your side, and they're doing most of your damage. You're sending them in to essentially maul the target to death. It's a really cool spec, and you're utilizing your pets to the most potential that they can. There is a downside to this. So in PvP, obviously, beast mastery is very strong because it's very much relying on your pets to do the damage, not you, so you can be line of sight and still do damage. But obviously with pets, they can get CC'd a lot easier through Frost Novas, Ring of Frosts, anything that slows really, roots as well. In PvE, I think this is still a very solid choice. And everything in raids and stuff is a very solid choice, played to its best abilities. But essentially what you're looking at is, again, the pet mechanic isn't you, so you're having to do, like, almost have the pets as an extension of yourself. If you like managing your pets, then this is the spec for you. It's amazing. And obviously you can customize your pet names and stuff. You can get many different pets in WoW now. And it is good fun, I'm not going to lie. It is a good fun spec. The second spec is Marksman Hunter. Now, you can have a pet with this, but alternatively, you can be a lone wolf, and this lone wolf talent will mean that you can't have a pet, but you do more damage. And this is more based around your archery or gun skills, kind of. You're standing still, you're aim-shotting people, you're taking big chunks of damage at people, and, it's all very much with your bow and your guns, etc., that you're utilizing your damage. Your pets are kind of there to utilize as a defensive ability. So defensive abilities such as Roar's Sacrifice from your pet. Master's Call gives you a sort of freedom effect where you can move around like quite freely without being hindered. Your pets are there for the utility purposes more than the damage in Marksman. And for the final specialization, you have Survival. Survival is now a melee spec, kind of melee. It's a hybrid of melee and ranged. You do have ranged abilities, but at the same time, you're using a two-handed melee weapon rather than a bow or a gun. And you're getting in there and you're using sort of melee abilities to deal your damage. The pet is there and it is a very good source of your damage still, but it's also utilized as the utility as well, from like Marksman and Beast Mastery, so Roar Sacrifice, Roar Freedom, etc. Beast Mastery is the only one of these three specs to really heavily rely on your pet for damage, but you still do rely on your pet for other uses in these three specializations. But all of them are great fun. All of them, in PvP wise, are very much subject to a setup composition. So you're looking at Beast Mastery will have a lot of uptime with stun and trap, so a lot of CC there. You have Survival, which also has a stun and a trap, as well as Scatter Shot. You have Disarms. You have a lot of utility from all of these Hunter specs. MM Hunter can pump out a lot of damage very quickly, but it's got a lot of downtime as well at the same time. So in PvP, you're utilizing a lot of setup specs like Scatter Play, which is a Shadow Priest and a Hunter, or Thug Cleave, which is a Hunter and a Rogue. All of these kind of classes rely around the setup of their goes instead of just, most melee comps being a Zug Fest where you're just zugging everything and not caring about CCing at all, that kind of deal. Well, you care about it a little bit, but, not as much. For PvE, I'm not going to go too much into PvE. I'm not as well adapted to it as others probably are. But essentially, it's a very solid choice. You have three different specializations that you can swap to and sort of alternate the way that you play, depending on the bosses that you face, depending on if you just feel like it as well. But I'm not going to say that there's one better than the other. I think there's some that are more fun. In terms of my ranking, I would definitely say Survival is one of the more interactive and more enjoyable specializations, and then it would be Beast Mastery and Marksmanship. Now, Marksmanship, I think, can be completely third or first. It's just such a different way of playing. It's very big damage, bursty damage, whereas the other two are more consistent, I would say. But yeah, in PvE, they're all very solid choices, and I would recommend all of them because they are all good fun. Pets-wise, they are very much reliant on their pets. If you're looking at Wrath of the Lich King Classic, they are very much reliant on their pet. Their pet is the heart and soul of the class. For Beast Mastery, it's, even in retail, it's still the heart and soul of the class. A lot of your utility comes from your pets. A lot of your team help comes from your pets through the use of Roar Sacrifice and freedom. A lot of it comes from your pets, and also it's just nice to have a pet, isn't it? Like, you can name the pet, you can get different ones, you can get multiple if you're a beast mastery, and you can name them both. So I believe the hunter that I play with, his pets are called Vegan and Nuggets or something. So Vegan Nuggets, who knows? It's ridiculous names, I do have to say so myself, but it is what it is. You can name them whatever. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but yeah, the pets are the heart and soul of this class. So if you love having like a little companion with you, you will love Hunter. It's really, really good. For an RP element of like hunters, obviously you have a kind of ranger class in every sort of game. In Dungeons and Dragons, you have a ranger. In most other things, Final Fantasy, you probably have that sort of specialization as well. You have many things that utilize a bow and arrow or a gun, and utilize like pets. So obviously you have your traps. You're going to be utilizing as an RP element. Obviously, if you're a hunter, you're out in the wilderness, you'd utilize like bear traps and stuff to catch your prey. And you can utilize all of these different traps, such as the explosive, frost, freezing, tar traps. You can utilize many of them, and they all have their own purpose and utility. Obviously, these really do play into the RP element of the hunter a lot, and really does give you the sense of, oh, okay, I'm kind of slowly working this prey down almost. For pros and cons of hunters, you obviously have the pros, which are the RP elements. You get to have a pet, you get to even have two if you're beast mastery. You're very mobile, and the utility that you have is actually very high through your pet and just in general through disarms, traps, etc. But the cons, from my opinion, are that you have a pet as well. So the pet can either hinder or, be a positive influence. Hunters recently have only just gotten changes to allow the revived pet to not be like interruptible, which is a massive buff, by the way, because you wouldn't believe how many times I've gone up against a beast mastery hunter in PvP and said, yeah, let's kill the pet. We kill the pet, and then the hunter's just useless throughout the entire game, and he can't get his pet res. So they've recently just changed that, so they're kind of making it less of a con at the moment. But essentially, if your pet dies, you lose out on a lot of utility, and you're kind of having to use that as an extension. You've got to bring your pet back if he's in there alone. You've got to make sure that he doesn't die through mend pet, or your healer has to heal him. But essentially, the pets aren't as tanky as you are. They don't obviously have defensives. They still do take like AoE damage. Not a lot of AoE damage, but if you have dots on them, they can still die. So there is a lot of cons with your pets, but they're slowly getting it to a point where it's actually like not even a negative effect on your class. Definitely a pro though is having that extension, because it's like you can stop the like healer from drinking in a PvP scenario by sending your pet at them, or you can just get someone out of combat by having your pet on aggressive or something. In Wrath of the Lich King, there's many different elements to Hunter, and all of them are very good fun. I'm not going to lie, they are very, very good fun. I would definitely say for starting out purposes, if you're looking to get into World of Warcraft, Hunter is probably one of the more unique playstyles in the game. You obviously have Warrior that just Zug, I charge, I hit things with big axe. Hunters are a lot more eloquent? It seems like I just made that word up. They seem a bit more, fluid, like in terms of their movement. When you get their movement down, they are very, you just flow almost. Whereas Warriors, it's very much charge very fast, and then I get rooted, and I stop moving, and then I get slowed, so I'm walking and waddling. Hunters are very much, okay, I feign death to dispel this root, I disengage, get a speed boost, run around like crazy, throw a couple bombs at this people, serpent sting that guy, silence him. You can do a lot of things while not actually at the target, and if that's kind of your play style, you don't want to be like in there, then Hunter is definitely a good start. And I I would very much recommend it as sort of a very good starting class, in my opinion, for both Wrath of the Lich King and Retail. I think it's a very solid starting choice for anyone who's looking to play a sort of hunter or anything that's to do with pets. The only other pet class I would recommend is Demonology Warlock, but Demonology Warlock has a lot more to it than just you have a pet, and like, you know, that's kind of where it ends, because you could summon a shit ton of pets as a Demonology Warlock, but you've got to summon it at the right time, and you're constantly spawning imps, you know. There's a lot more to it than just you have a pet, whereas Hunter is very much the OG, this is my pet, and he's going to attack you and maul you, that kind of deal. So it's a very simple class, but with a very high skill ceiling. And I can say that for every single class. I do have to say that for every single class, because the niche things from every class are very high skill ceiling like things. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. It was a bit something different this week. I'm obviously going to be doing these a lot more for the people looking to get into WoW a bit more, or just people who are potentially on the cusp of joining WoW and they can get all their information from here. But I can look to do 2 classes next week, because one seems to be a bit short, so, you know, it's kind of a test run. But thank you all very much for listening, as always. Check out the links down below to support the channel, as well as the social medias. They're all down there, and any support would be greatly appreciated. Once again, thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.